Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People. In today's episode, last woman in line claims to be next. Distressing incident during lunch. My cousin went to jail. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Last woman in line claims to be next. This was years ago and I still chuckle at her nerve and I like to think, quick response. We were waiting at Chick-fil-A. They were very busy and they had lines that were rather indistinct. Easily 20 people were in front of this woman. She had, without doubt, just walked it and was the last person in line. I was clearly up at the counter and the next person in line for this particular line, but there are other people waiting for their orders, kids with parents, so it wasn't exactly obvious who was next and who was served and waiting for their order. The clerk says, "Who's next?" And the woman at the very back of the store that had just entered, the door wasn't even fully closed yet, chimes "I'm next" and began pushing her way to the clerk with 3 kids in tow. And pushing, shoving, forcing others out of the way, others who could not possibly have arrived after her. I just looked at her and said, I'm next. You aren't next. You aren't close to being next. You are not anywhere even close to being next. You are so far from being next that you are literally the very last person in line. Literally every single person in the room is in line before you. People were shocked. Frankly, I was a bit shocked too. I didn't raise my voice, but I definitely used my stained glass voice to make the announcement. Everyone stared at her and me. Some were shocked and uncomfortable. Many were smiling and giggling. Ms. Next just froze, sheepishly saying, "Oh, I just got back from Europe and that's how they do things there." I said, "Yeah, they haven't invented lines in Europe yet, huh, dot." The clerk gave me my lemonade for free that day. I got one 3 to 4 days a week. I was never sure if it was out of gratitude for putting her in her place when he wasn't allowed to be rude, out of gratitude for the brief moment of entertainment, or out of fear of me. I thanks him profusely, either way. And several people thanked me, some saying they wish they had the guts to say that. Here ends the lesson for the day. In Europe, the clerk would have been rude to her, that you were definitely not the next. In Europe, we know how to queue. See the queue to see Queen Elizabeth II's coffin in Britain last year. This just happened to me last week. I am the next in line and was waiting for the clerk to call me forward. Kind of like yours, a woman walks in and heads for the counter. She even looked at me and asks if I was in line. Yes, I say. She proceeds to step up to the counter to order anyway. I said, "Excuse me, but I was next." She said, "I only want to order one thing and I'm in a hurry." Oh, so I am slow because I'm being patient. The clerk took her order, which was more than one thing. It was a meal with several modifications. I was patient and did not grumble, but I was really hot. When she was finished, she thanked me. I said no problem, since she is definitely more important than I am, and that since she's so much older than me, she could have died waiting in line for 5 extra minutes. Needless to say, she turned red and walked away. I would have spoken to the manager about it. You should have been waited on first. I know Jesus said the first shall be last and the last shall be first, but I'm pretty sure he wasn't talking about the queues at a fast food restaurant. This should be your replay next time. Don't queue in Europe? Britain practically invented the queue. When 2 or more Englishmen are gathered together, they will form a queue. It's the law. The alternative is a riot. It doesn't happen much now, it's every man for himself and the devil take the hindmost. When I was young, you'd have got punched on the nose if you queue jumped. I assure you we queue over here and she would have got the same treatment also. Queuing is practically a religion in the U.K. edit. I know we're still part of the continent, I'm tired, and meant the E.U, which wasn't pertinent anyway. We were visiting London, and we were at an attraction. When you grow up in one country that gets in line on one side or the other, that's what you tend to do without thinking. We were sort of hanging on the right side of the corridor, waiting to get into the attraction, and one of the workers came up and said, "Oh, you must be bloody Americans, you're not queuing correctly." We laughed and got on the left side. I find that white women constantly step around or in front of me. Old, young, doesn't matter. I will said, "Excuse me, am I invisible?" and you should see the color drain from their faces. Where do they get the audacity? At least once a week this happens to me. "Oh, I didn't see you there, my hair is hot pink, I don't believe you didn't see me." They assume you'll just let it slide because others do. Distressing incident during lunch. My friend and I went out for lunch and had what can only be described as the most uncomfortable experience I have ever had with an entitled Karen. As we were standing in line to order, the woman behind us had a child who continuously knocked into us, ran between us, and was just plain obnoxious, while mom did little to stop them. After ordering, we went to find a seat. I suffer from bad anxiety, and eating out can be an uncomfortable experience for me at times in the best of circumstances, as large crowds and being in too close of proximity with strangers makes me uncomfortable and can trigger a flare-up. My friend and I located a table that was a bit out of the way. As we waited for our food, we were approached by the same lady who had been behind us in line, saying, "Can you move to a different table so I can sit with my child?" Normally, I probably would have been accommodating, but her demeanor was very off-putting, and honestly, I simply had no desire to sit elsewhere. Mind you, there were other available tables in the restaurant. If the shoe were on the other foot, I would simply wait for another table, not ask someone to get up from their table. I politely declined her request, to which she completely flipped out, yelling at me, "Are you serious? You're not going to move?" I calmly replied, "No, I am not," and asked her to leave us alone. That apparently didn't sit well with her, as she continued yelling, "No, I'm not going to leave you alone. You need to move." But my attempt to de-escalate the situation went unheeded. At this point, several other customers are witnessing this uncomfortable exchange. I am a black man, and at no point am I going to place myself in a situation of being confrontational with an overly hysterical white woman who is already playing the perceived victim to a situation that she herself caused. Thankfully, the couple at the table beside us stepped in and pointed out to her that other tables were available, and she began yelling at them to mind their business. They also asked her to leave, as I had, and pointed out that she was being rude and disrespectful to us. Despite the interjection, she continued her tirade, at which point, another table finishing up told the woman that she could have their table, which was honestly just rewarding bad behavior, and she finally left us alone, aside from continuing to stare daggers at us. After our food arrived, both of our appetites were gone, and we simply bagged up our meals and left. I have never in my life experienced something like this. What bothers me about the situation is that when my friend went and relayed this to the manager on duty, while there was clearly surprise and horror at the situation, nothing was done. I don't understand allowing a customer to assault another customer in front of the entire restaurant and there be no repercussions. Anyway, just needed to vent and get this all out while trying not to lose what little faith I have left in humanity. I think she'd have wanted whatever table you sat at, OP. It wasn't the table. It was just her wanting to start something with you. Shame on the restaurant employees. I'm so sorry this happened to you. Kudos to the other restaurant patrons, though at least they cared. To be fair, restaurant workers aren't paid enough to deal with hags like this. The manager maybe, but not regular wokers. Why did she pick the black man to tell him to move and not anyone else? She sounds psychotic. As a white woman, even I can see the disrespect and racial motivation behind her appalling behavior. I'm sorry this happened to you and you deserve better. Never be afraid to have the waitstaff ask for the manager about being harassed. These situations are what they are paid for. And that usually shuts down Karens right away. It's what they do. My cousin went to jail. Well, it's over. My cousin, after a lot of convincing, pleaded guilty since he really couldn't fight any of the charges. He was brought upon theft, assault and battery, underage drinking, and harassment. He was sentenced to a few months in county jail, followed by 2 years probation and anger management classes. My cousin acted like he'd gotten so much worse as he was pretty emotional about it. Not exactly crying or angry. Just emotional. That's really the best way I can put it since I was not there to see it. He did originally try to aim for not guilty. But the public defender he got and his parents basically told him he had no chance of fighting the charges because of the clear evidence against him. There was CCTV footage of him attacking and robbing me. Cell phone footage of him showing up at my apartment to try and attack me. Screenshots of the ad he put up of the bike he stole from me. The police report on his being intoxicated from underage drinking. And all of the harassment I got from him and his friends. He really had no choice but to raise a white flag, plead guilty, or he'd have possibly gotten a longer sentence. He's sitting in county jail now. And when he gets out, he'll likely go back to living in the loft above his parents' garage. He finally gave up on blaming me since no one sided with him. All of his so-called friends ghosted him too. And he was forced to write out an apology to me by his parents. I did get the restraining order against him. But it's only good for a year. We'll see if his behavior changes and whether or not I'll need to renew it. But I want nothing to do with him for the foreseeable future. I wouldn't say dead to me. But I don't want to speak to him, let alone look at his face anytime soon. Other than that, I may as well fill in a few more details. The bike is still riding well. I put slime sealant in the tubes since one of them developed a slow leak. I found the spot with the leak, dabbed a drop of super glue onto it, then squirted a generous amount of slime into the tubes. There hasn't been a leak since. And yes, I did get a proper lube for the chain. I also re-greased the crank bearings. Before going to jail, my cousin had a miserable time in that loft above his parents' garage. The summer heat made it very hot up there, and he had no air conditioner. Not that anyone would give him one. So he just had to use several fans. Rumor is he stole a couple of those fans, because they were clearly not new, and just appeared out of nowhere. He was broke, so the family think odds are he didn't buy them. He didn't bother looking for a new job since he knew jail was imminent. And since he's a known thief, I wouldn't doubt it if he prowled around at night taking whatever he could grab. But I'm not gonna make assumptions. I'll leave that to everyone else. The most ironic thing is my cousin had to either walk or ride his father's bicycle if he wanted to go anywhere. He used to have a motorbike, but had to sell it because he had debts to pay. All his good stuff like his PC, gaming systems, motorbike, furniture, and even some expensive shoes he had all had to be sold. Pretty much anything he had of value was sold either online or in a garage sale. So when he gets out of jail and eventually has to find a job again, he'll have to start from square one. I didn't really have any sympathy for him. He caused all of this to happen after all. His life is gonna be screwed for a long time with jail on his resume too. If you hear nothing from me about my cousin on this site again, then you'll know he's leaving me alone. It's sad that I recalled Opie's previous abuse from his cousin. At least with this update, we all know he's facing the consequences of his actions, finally. Opie is probably right about his cousin stealing those fans. I hope when the cousin gets released from jail he'll be able to find a job, otherwise, he'll go back to stealing again. Just cause they are family doesn't mean you have to tolerate or like them. You don't choose your relatives. You do choose your family. I'd renew restraining order, then see what his behavior will be like. You can always not renew next time if behavior is appropriate. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.